Hi, Patty. Okay, we are going to get going. Can everybody see my screen? It should say closing techniques, which should be today's. Okay, thank you. I got responses. Thank you so much. So today's webinar is on closing techniques. And I know that all of you are familiar and aware of what closing techniques are and that you're supposed to be using them. At least I hope you are, because that is part of your job to use closing techniques throughout your entire process of leasing. So closing techniques have kind of become a lost art for leasing consultants, and it largely is due to the fact that most might not know what closing techniques really are. In actuality, effective closing techniques should begin the minute you make that first contact, whether it's the minute they walk in the door, you receive a lead through an ILS or through Entrata, or maybe you get a phone call from the prospect. Whatever that first initial contact is when you start your closing techniques. And you're going to begin, we're going to do, oh dear, we're going to do, this is unfortunate timing. I'm so sorry. Hold on one second. Okay, I'm so sorry. I'm having work done on the house in the middle of a webinar. Okay. We are going to go through closing techniques in a 3-step organized sales process, otherwise known as the OSP. And this is where the leasing consultant is going to take a prospect or an individual from a lead or prospect to an applicant or a resident. In other words, from contact to appointment to lease. Now these steps, we also call them the 3 Ps. It involves the person, pleasure, and pain. And I will be explaining those in a minute. But the idea is that you're constantly moving the prospect forward to the next stage in the sales process. Because that's actually what you all are. You are salespeople. You are selling your product. And you want to take them in the right direction from contact or appointment, getting that tour, getting that scheduled appointment, all the way through to filling out the application. And closing, the actual closing happens when we stop talking about what we want to do or what we want the prospect to do and actually ask them, are they ready to start doing it? In other words, asking for the money. That is an actual close, when you actually ask for the money. And you need to do that with pride and honor, because what you're offering them is what they want. And that's what we're going to get to, how we figure out that your property is exactly what they want. Okay, so number 1, it's the needs. And the needs is where we get that first P, which is the person. Finding out what that person needs. What is driving that person to make this change or shift in their life or move? So you want to, find out exactly what they want. Don't you present this long drawn out, marketing, spiel that's just giving them information. We need them to supply us with their information and what they want out of this. Why are they even calling you or contacting you? We need them to tell us what they're wanting. So make sure that you're listening to your prospect and you're finding out exactly what their needs are. Remember that this is their decision. They're contacting you. It's not yours. So not only does asking them questions, or I like to call it an interview, you're actually interviewing your prospect, but it engages your prospect and it builds that relationship. Remember, we're all about that connection, that relationship, that rapport, and it enables the leasing consultants to quickly define what their clients' needs are or concerns, that they can find the right match for that particular resident. And you might have all of the brochures and floor plans and pricing materials ready, but make sure that you're not just shoving them the information and leaving them to their own. You want to make sure that you're there and that you're present in that relationship for you to engage with the prospect. Don't just give them paperwork, but we want that eye-to-eye contact. That is what's going to keep that relationship and keep them engaged. Okay, so number 2 is motivation. And this is the second P where we talk about pleasure. So what is their motivation? During that first step, that need step or that person step, you're going to be finding out what actually is it that's motivating them to move. What are their prospect motivators? You know, is it because they want to be closer to work, closer to family? They need a bigger space, a lifestyle change. Maybe they're seeking the best school district. So all of those things are what we call motivators. They are what you are going to write down and make sure that you know that this particular thing is what's motivating your prospect to move. Okay, now here's the other part of this pleasure, which is it's their motivator, but what is their pleasure for doing this? So this is where emotions come into play, and emotions are a large part of the closing technique and the prospect's experience, because choosing a place to live is an emotional thing. It is a huge decision that they're making in their life. So emotions are going to have a large role in this experience. So you can ask them, this is their goal, whatever their motivator was. Let's say it was they want to be closer to family. So what will that make them feel like? You know, how will you feel being closer to your family? How's that going to change your life? What are you going to, do? What are the pros? What's exciting about being closer to your family? Put the questions on them and let them sit back and say, hey, this move is going to make me feel like this, and this is what I want, because it's their goal. People can't say no to their own goals. So it's essential to ask those extra questions to bring that emotion out from behind and into the forefront so that they are making that important decision and ready to leave a deposit and put in their application because they're accomplishing their goals. So they must realize that making this decision is going to bring them the pleasure that they are seeking to move forward in their goal. And the way to do that is to ask them the questions and use these questions from what their motivators are and their goals are to put it right back at them. Well, that's great. I am so happy that you are getting, your 2 sons in this best school district. I know this is your goal, this is what you wanted, and now you're accomplishing it. So learn how to use what their motivations are and their goals are in your closing techniques. If anybody has any questions, Shelby hopefully will let me know. Okay, the third P in the OSP process is pain. And you might be thinking, what does pain have to do with closing or with leasing apartments? How does pain come into the picture? Well, a prospect is very reluctant to actually go towards pleasure. Now, what I mean by that is when people think about, oh, I want this because this is like just fun and pleasurable for me. But you have to remember, people always put themselves last. When it comes to just wanting this because it's pleasurable, they might feel guilty. So they might put themselves last. But people will move away from pain. They will change their current situation if it is bringing them pain. And they are more likely to make a move and make a decision based on moving away from that discomfort or that that situation that is causing their family not to live the way that they want them to live. So that's what I mean by, the pain, we can actually use that to get them to a place where it will bring them pleasure, but they're choosing to just move away from something that's not giving them a quality of life. So you can see by the diagram, are you happy? Well, no. Do you want to be happy? Yes. So then you make that change. But if you are happy, you typically don't change anything. So we want to bring about, what will be the deciding factor to make them make that decision. And it could be because they need to get away from a situation. So to get them to take action versus not taking any action, you want to ask them to make the decision. Because again, they're the ones making the decisions. It's their goals, not yours. So what's more important to them? The pleasure that they might get from moving, or that pain that will stay and result from not moving? And a way to put this in action and to actually use it and ask your clients, you might say, remember, I've shown you your dream apartment. I know you love the kitchen. I know you love this and that. Maybe name some things that they really did like, but you have to make this important decision. What is more important to you? Is paying $100 less in rent and staying where you are more important than being able to move closer to your family and see your family on a regular basis? So that's what that might look like, getting them to take action over not making a decision. And this just helps them, frame their own issue and make their decision very clear, because it's their own denial if they don't make that change. And it could quickly help them make that choice that is in alignment with their goals. I know this is a different way of thinking about closing and closing techniques. But I want you all to see that emotion is the driving force with making a decision such as where am I going to live? So this is just thinking outside the box this time. Okay, the last piece is handling objections. Of course, you're always going to have those that say, oh, well, I wish I had a washer dryer, or they're going to bring up some kind of objection, but those are really just excuses for people avoiding that uncomfortable decision that, is really standing in their way of reaching their goals. So the key is to, of course, isolate their objections and weigh them one at a time against what their goal actually is, to let them know that if they make this decision, they are going to be achieving their goals, such as if their objection was, we really want a washer and dryer, well, ask them, what is more important, being closer to your family? And it could be, being in the right school district, whatever it is that is their goal, is that more important? Or is having a washer and dryer more important? So, put it back on them and let them weigh that decision. So, repeat that with objections, each show how they are excuses for not complying with their own goals for moving or reaching their ultimate goal. So by following the OSP, or the organized sales process, or the 3 Ps, person, pleasure, pain, you may have noticed that we've talked about this before, that they're all involving emotion. And that is 90% of what drives decisions, that the emotions help your prospect actually see the decision that they should make. And at each time, at each step of this, every time you're asking them a question, you're going over what their goal is, you're going over what they want, you're asking them, are you ready to get this application going? We need to act fast. It's okay to use all your closing techniques we'll get into, but you're going to use the preface of what is their goal? What is their motivator? What is their ultimate decision? So the emotions, I've kind of lined it out into these different emotions that actually can be used in not only marketing, but your closing techniques. And you might not realize that these emotions apply to people making their decisions. For instance, okay, we see fear there, offering peace of mind. What does that mean? How do I do that? How does that help? Well, if you're fearful, it might be What happens if your appliances break down, and you don't have, a plumber or a handyman that can come and help you fix it? Well, you don't have to worry. Don't be afraid, because we've got 24-hour maintenance on site, and they're just a phone call away. So that's what I mean by easing their mind. What if they're fearful that they're not going to have a place to park their car? Well, you can ease that fear by saying, we've got garages available, you have assigned parking, you can get a carport, whatever it may be. And these are just some examples to give you an idea of how you can use fear to give that prospect peace of mind that they're making the right decision to move to your community, because you're going to relieve it. So the next one, greed. Well, you're offering it all, and it's okay. Let them feel like they're getting away with something. Here at the Allure, we have everything you want. You wanted this, 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 and we even have more than that. So you are going to be getting it all right here. And then guilt. This is giving them a reason to move. And that's actually a good one to go to, because usually their motivators are that they spend too much time at work, their commute's too long, they want to be closer to their family, whatever it may be. But that guilt, you could phrase it like, well, is your commute to work taking you away from your family? Or do you want to have time to cook dinner for your family? Move in here and you'll be home for dinner. So are y'all getting an idea of how these emotions turn into closing techniques and an avenue for you to use them to help you close your clients? So anger. The next one, that's, sometimes people might get angry if they realize they can only have one internet provider or one cable provider. Let them know that you've got that they've got a choice in which cable provider they want to use. Let them know that they have a choice. You can have a garage if you want. You don't have to have a garage. You can have a carport if you want, or you don't have to have a carport if you want. In other words, let them know that they're in control of making their own decisions and you're providing choices for them. And then exclusivity. Well, nobody else has it. You see the picture here, the example. We're the only community overlooking the prestigious Dunes Golf Course. So you could use exclusivity for your property if you've got something that nobody else does, if you're in a school district that nobody else is in, or if you've got certain amenities that nobody else has. And then salvation, that moment where you have just realized that somebody is in love with your apartment and they finally feel like this could be their home. Use it. Make that statement. I think you found home. I think this is it. You don't need to look any further. And you might not realize it, but those are all closings. All of these are closings. The last one is flattery. Self-worth. Are they worth it? We talked about earlier how people will forego pleasure because they put themselves last. Well, let them know, hey, you're worth it. It's okay. It might cost a little more, but you've earned it. You should have it. Take it. So with every experience comes an emotion, and it's up to you to be your prospect's best experience. So with this said, all of these different kind of avenues to take for closing, your goal is to sell the apartment, not just to show it, and to reassure them of the decision that they're making by confirming that it's everything that they wanted, it meets their needs, and you're listing all of the positive aspects. And of course, you always want to be closing, because it is policy that you have to close a minimum of 3 times during your experience with your prospect, but that's just a minimum. You want to be closing, as many times as you can from the beginning of your interaction with them. And don't forget to use the emotions to achieve that prospect's goals. And you want to be the best during the entire prospect, and don't just, give them information like we said and send them on their way. You want to stay connected and engaged during the entire leasing and application process. So many of you have seen these closing techniques before. They are provided by Ellis, and I use them in my Leasing 101 class. But these are just different techniques, and you're going to have this presentation. It's available to you in the portal after this webinar. And I encourage you all to go and just print this off. If you got the Leasing 101 handbook, it's in there. And practice these closes. Spend a week trying to do different closes each day. See how many times you can incorporate a different close. There's the trial, where you're putting their belongings in the apartment. Go to the apartment. Of course, you have to do it virtually right now, but you could say, how do you think you would put your furniture? What do you have? Do you have a sectional? And let them put themselves there and place their furniture. And then you can also, just be direct and let's get this going now. Give them options, but not too many. You want to do just 2 options if possible. The most you ever want to do is 3. Of course, in leasing, my magic number is 3. So no more than 3 options or choices. And then the summary, which is also using, emotions that you're summarizing exactly what it is that they want and that they're reaching their goal. The assumptive, just, we already know that you want it. Let me get started on the paperwork. And then you're ready to move in. So if I could, would you, this is a good one if you know for a fact that a certain apartment is gonna get new flooring and you already know it's gonna get new flooring because somebody moved out and has to be replaced. This is a good close that you could use in that instance, and they're gonna feel like they're special and they're getting a really good deal. They're getting brand new flooring, even though the apartment was gonna get it anyway. But you only want to do this, of course, if you know for a fact that the apartment is going to get whatever it is that you're going to offer. And then, of course, urgency. I think urgency is the #1 close. Everybody goes to that. Everybody uses it, I think, at every close. So my challenge for y'all is to branch out and use different closes besides urgency. And of course, there's an incentive if you're offering a special or you have a look and lease. And then there's also using your team members and your coworkers to help you in that closing process. That just helps to validate with the prospect that they're making the right decision. So don't feel like you can't use your coworkers to help you. That's what teams are for. All right, so that is the closing techniques. Hopefully put a little bit of a new spin on it for you and a different perspective. But remember that when you ask someone for the money, you are helping them make a decision. It's a decision that they have to make somewhere because they're out looking for a job. So it might as well be with you, because I want you to think in your head, in your heart, that you are doing this for them, not to them. So closing is a good thing. All right, guys. That is closing techniques. If anybody has any questions?
One thing I want to add is this is a really good time for you guys to really hammer down on what exactly your objections are. What I like to do with my teams is I buy a cheap Jenga set and I write the objections on each piece of the Jenga. And like during your team meetings, it's a really good time to just kind of take the pressure off and make it fun to try to come up with the different objections and how you're going to overcome them. That way you can get creative with your answers each time, but also just kind of can lift your spirits as we're in this really uncertain and not super fun time.
That's an awesome idea. I love that. That's great. Yeah, and it, the more, Shelby, you're right, because the more objections that you could come up with for your own property before the prospect does, you're going to be ready to diffuse them. All right, guys, we don't want to take up too much more of your time. It's about the right timing for our webinars to be over. So thank you all for joining. And again, the presentation will be on the portal, and Shelby has also emailed it out to you all. So everybody should have access to it. Thank you again, everybody. It's good connecting to you all.